everybody for joining today. My name is Eric Clay. I'm the Director of Marketing of Flare. And with me is Alexandre Viau. He is our lead software developer, and Francois Masson. He is our head of artificial intelligence of Flare. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys.
Hello, Eric.
Nice to see you, Eric.
Nice to see you too. So we have an exciting discussion today on AI and cybersecurity in 2023. So I think what we'll do is we'll get started with some basic questions just to build people's frameworks so we're all speaking the same language, and then we'll move up to some more advanced topics like ChatGPT and key trends. So to get started with, and I'll bat this over to either of you, what is the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning? Because you'll see marketing departments like, well, not like mine, but you'll see other marketing departments use them kind of synonymously. And my understanding is they're two different things.
Sure, I think I can start. So yeah, that's a good question, actually, Eric. So we can say, for example, that machine learning is actually a subset of artificial intelligence. We can define, for example, artificial intelligence like the ability of a machine or a computer to create or to mimic the human behavior. But it might be as simple as, for example, if-else condition. Anything that can be automated can range into the field of artificial intelligence. On the other hand, machine learning, which is more a subset of AI, as I said, is like the application where you provide some data and you want the system to learn from the experience and to becoming better and better from the data that you give it to him.
Gotcha. So just to repeat that, so to make sure I understand correctly, artificial intelligence is broadly trying to get machines to mimic human behavior, while machine learning is the specific subset of artificial intelligence where you're providing a machine new data to train it to be able to provide better answers to your questions.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to go deeper onto that, there is also deep learning, which is also a subfield of machine learning, where you use what you call the neuron architecture to be able to train more complex model that normal mathematical way can do it.
Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I've seen deep learning in a lot of marketing materials for sure. So let's move on a little bit to cybersecurity. And I'll send this one to Alex. How is artificial intelligence used in cybersecurity? What are some of the core use cases for companies to leverage it?
Yeah, so there's different use cases. So I think one area where AI does well is where either there's large quantities of data, or the shape of the data itself keeps evolving. So when the shape of the data changes a lot, it's hard to assign a dev team to a decision tree that will work well to make decisions based on that data, because this data changes all the time. So instead, like what we prefer to do in those cases is build a process to build a model. Once you've had that process to build a model, you're able to endure the data's shape changing and then rebuild your model, because the process that you've developed to build that, to arrive to that model, has not changed. That's one of the main principles of why we build models. It's that because like sometimes maintaining the process to build a model is easier than to maintain a decision tree itself. So like examples of where this works well is, for example, analyzing network traffic patterns. Like if you're inside a company and your company changes all the time, the software that you have running inside of your company changes all the time, the patterns change. So it's hard to build. It's hard to build like static rules that will define like what is normal behavior inside your company. However, like models are good at doing this and are good at spotting changes. One other example is unauthorized access, or like people creating fake profiles on your platform, trying different login methods, and this is the kind of thing where it's easy to teach to a model to recognize what is a normal human using my platform and what is a threat actor using my platform. Like how do they differ? That's examples.
So as a follow-up to this question, Alex, do you think that AI, so obviously there's downsides to a decision tree-based approach, do you think that AI can pick up on some things, maybe like traffic analysis or pattern analysis that a human wouldn't be able to, just because of the sheer volume of data, pick up on anomalies and things like that might be missed through a more basic approach?
Yeah, and like so for multiple reasons. Like so, as you said, so for the sheer volume, usually it doesn't mean not because you're using AI that it's able to analyze larger quantities of data. However, because you're using AI trained models, like you might be able to spot patterns that would have been hard to spot manually, and maybe it would have taken you a really long time to build like a rule set of 1,000 of rules that look for all of the patterns that you want. But like there's multiple like well-documented ways to build models that are able to spot those 100 things much easier than you would have yourself.
Gotcha. No, that absolutely makes sense. For the next question, I'm going to take just a brief 30 seconds and describe what Flare does as a platform without doing a whole sales pitch. And because my next question for Francois is going to be how Flare has specifically taken artificial intelligence and used it in the context of helping companies improve cybersecurity. So before I ask him that, though, I'll provide a brief synopsis for the audience. Flare automates external exposure monitoring. So we look for public exposure, whether it's on clear websites like public GitHub repositories for secret leakage, API keys, Pastebin, where maybe employees are leaking confidential information, and even using complex Google dorking. And then we also automate monitoring across the dark web for things like dark web forums, marketplaces, and then specialized markets like infected device markets such as Russian and Genesis. So Francois, how has Flare taken artificial intelligence and applied it to helping companies get actionable intelligence out of all of the world's data?
Sure. Without going too much into the secret sauce of Flare, I can tell you that right now we are currently using AI for different things. One of them is what we call finding similar actors. So basically we have an AI model that takes a look of dynamic HTML content. This model is able to extract the author name, the content, the date, and so on. And with those kind of information, we can like cluster and find some similar actors that might lead to the same entity. So that's one of them. The other one is what we have is like classification using unsupervised data. So we just receive lots and lots of documents, and one of the model that we use is able to say this document is a source code, this one contain like a secret key and so on. But that the beauty of it is that we don't use any regex rule that a human can do, and this is way more powerful that a human can achieve.
Right. So instead of taking a rules-based approach where we might be misclassifying certain things, if it was just to follow a standard set of rules, we're using AI to automate the classification and help companies kind of prioritize the different exposures that they're going to find. Because obviously, if you Google any company's name, you're going to get a lot of data online. So it's really important to be able to prioritize that and classify it correctly so that security teams and companies can action it. Exactly. That absolutely makes sense. Thank you, Francois. And I want to shift gears here for just a moment and talk about the flip side of it, right? So defensive blue teams aren't the only ones that can use artificial intelligence. So either Alex or Francois, can you talk about how threat actors could potentially use artificial intelligence, both how they've used it previously, if they have, maybe they haven't, and then how we think they're going to be using it as we go into 2023 and 2024?
What's interesting about the examples that I gave earlier is that you can reverse them all. So I was mentioning earlier, like fake profile detection. Well, change detection by generation, and that's what bad actors do. So and there's kind of an arms race here. Like you can use AI both to detect and generate human-like behavior. Another example again is so network traffic patterns. So let's say you have a bad actor trying to scan your website, and usually your firewall would have blocked this person. Well, so it's easy for an AI to generate human-like behavior of browsing your website that also is able to scan your website. So like one pattern that we're seeing all the time is that the threat actors, they try to apply the same technologies that we use on the blue team in order to attack your organization. So, and that's why you don't want to just rely on AI to do your cybersecurity. It's a tool amongst the others. Like there's still fundamentals that are really good to lay on, and yeah, so AI should just be a tool, right?
Yeah, so it can be used by both threat actors and good actors. And so let's take, I know, Francois, you prepared a brief demonstration for us of how threat actors can use AI. And so before we dive into that, I'm going to preface this by saying I'd be doing our audience a grave disservice if we didn't dive into ChatGPT, given the relevancy and the news cycles it has created recently. And I know that OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, has been progressively improving the security of their platform and reducing the risks of threat actors using it, but that doesn't mean it still can't be used. So Francois, I would love to see what you prepared for us to show us how ChatGPT could be used by threat actors.
Yeah, it's very, very short demo, but I just tried to put myself in the skin of a bad actor and see how very, very easy, in less than 2 minutes, I can provide a code that can steal information from anyone using a website. So let me share my screen. So hope it's big enough.
Yep, we can see it.
So basically, I just went to the OpenAI and testing the ChatGPT. I just typed the following sentences. So please write an email about the World Cup and in which there is a link, for example. And that's the response of ChatGPT. And what kind of scary or interesting is that before, when you receive those kind of phishing email, it was very, very obvious that some prince in Nigeria send you an email because his family just deceased and he has a lot of plenty of money to give you, and you just need to give some information. But now, when you take a look at it, that might be kind of real website that send you those kind of information. So now you can easily see of a random a bad guy can just spread this email to thousands of hundreds of mail and just hoping to receive an answer for that. And on the other part, I just asked him to write a mini JavaScript field that just collect the information from your credit card number, the CVV, and so on, and just write a mini JavaScript field. I also validated that the script was correct with Alex, and told me that is quite convincing. So if you're allowed to provide those functions into your website, you should be able to easily correct all of the privacy document from someone that was just naive to think it was a real website, provide the credit info, and think that it just bought ticket for the World Cup. So yeah, that's one of the examples how ChatGPT can be used for bad actors.
The first example here, I think, is very telling, right? It's a good example of how we can use language models to generate good looking and sensible text. And one other interesting part in this is so usually you'd have to go through a lot of research to write a convincing email that talks about the World Cup and introduces maybe news in the email so that it looks like it's current and it looks like it makes sense. And if you put all of this energy into writing this email, and then quickly your email is marked as spam and detected by spam filters, well, that's sad, right? Because you've worked maybe 2 hours to write that email. It's already been fingerprinted and it's blocked. But if you use models like ChatGPT, you can generate 1,000 emails that more or less have the same result, right? And they will not get fingerprinted because they're all different. That's like pattern generation here. Like we can achieve the same thing. We can bypass fingerprinting because our emails can be unique per recipient. We can even introduce information about the recipient in our email and in different shapes that will change in each email. That's very powerful and scary stuff.
So I'll take a minute and just say that this could also be used by blue teams too, right? So you could also write really specific simulated phishing emails to help train your employees that would even look like things that threat actors might be writing, since they might be using ChatGPT too. So it's a little bit of an AI arms race.
Yeah, it's always been like a cat and mouse game, but even for ChatGPT, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do we see, so, we've talked about phishing emails. How do we see this being used by threat actors in 2023 and 2024? Do we think, I will take a brief moment and say that I spent a little bit of time searching ChatGPT on Flair's platform, specifically on like dark web forums and markets. And there is a lot of chatter about it. Even I saw a couple instances where threat actors were actually writing code and sharing it with each other. So do we see this like continuing to grow? And I think there's also a corollary here, which ChatGPT is probably the first AI chatbot that is as sophisticated as it is, but it's not probably going to be the only one, right? So DALL-E 2, the image generation, was followed by Stable Diffusion, which is open source. So the code could easily be changed to bypass restrictions. So even if ChatGPT manages to restrict almost all types of malicious activity, or OpenAI manages to restrict almost all types of malicious activity, there will likely be an open source at some point, whether it's in 6 months or 2 years, that can do a lot of the more harmful stuff without any kind of restrictions. So how do you guys see that shaping the landscape over time?
Good comments. I think so. I think the comment about the generating code is interesting. I think like in the example that that Francois has shown us, the first example to me is more threatening, right? So you can generate a lot of text that looks very human, and you can change it. You can generate multiple permutations of it. Now, when it comes to code and like generating malware and things like that, those are usually like well-researched domains already that don't necessarily need AI. So we've known how to obfuscate code for a long time. We've known how to obfuscate code in ways and patterns that are hard to detect, and we don't necessarily need AIs in those areas. What's really impressive with this example is that it's able to generate semi-good code. It's not more threatening than good access to documentation, which like has existed for a long time. Yeah.
Also, if I might add to that, first of all, ChatGPT is based on what we call in AI reinforcement learning and human in the loop. So basically, to be better and better, he needs to ask the human, is it good what I'm doing, and so on, to getting better and better. So you can easily imagine that you can provide some walled garden, say, you should not answer that, you should not answer that because you speak about that or that subject. But basically, he can learn that some stuff cannot be provided. And the other thing is that all of the code and of the sentences that are made because they were released on the open source, and all of the data and all of the text that are generated are already in the public domain. So it does not create anything new. It just copy what he learned. It just, I'm not going to say vomit, but close to that. So you won't be able to create new stuff that you've never seen it.
No, that absolutely makes sense.
The image generation software and models are very interesting. Like I think a pattern that we're going to see emerge in the next couple of years was that you have to be gullible to trust images, right? Images can always be faked, and that's going to become a new reality. And I think the way around that is awareness. Like AI is in the next couple of years is going to be used amongst other things, not just in cybersecurity, but to manipulate public opinion, to generate fake content, whether it's text or news article or images or phishing emails. Those are we're going to see a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It reminds me of something that happened back in the 80s in the States with President Reagan. He made a joke off camera that got caught on a mic that we've launched the nuclear weapons. Sorry about that. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we're back. You said launching a nuclear weapon?
Well, one moment.
Out of battery, Eric.
In the meantime, maybe we can answer one of the questions that was asked to in the chat.
Nope, still not.
So, Thomas, you're asking if ChatGPT is not able to generate new code. I think what we've seen in the example that Francois has shown us is that yes, it's able to generate new code, but it's not able to invent totally new pattern, right? So a bit of what it's doing is looking at examples it's seen and using as input what you're telling him to generate code based on patterns that he already knows. And like models like that are immensely useful, right? So they provide you very quick access to documentation and things that and pattern that they've seen. It doesn't mean that what they're going to generate is correct, but as a programmer, they are a very helpful tool because I think that we do all the time as programmers is look at examples and try to adapt them to what we're trying to do right now. If we have a model that saves me 5 Google searches and just gives me an example that I can modify 1 or 2 lines of, I'm really happy, and this is a powerful tool for me. Like there's already products that are in the building around this. I think Copilot is an example of those.
Back in the 80s, Reagan made a joke like where he thought was off mic about launching nuclear weapons at the Soviet Union. The Soviets actually took it very seriously, right? I think they raised their alert level. Luckily, they didn't launch missiles back based on Reagan's humor. But the point I'm making is we're moving into a world where people's voices could easily be copied by artificial intelligence. Images and videos could easily be generated by artificial intelligence, and obviously text can be generated by artificial intelligence. How do you think this affects trust and safety, like society-wide, and then specifically in the cybersecurity domain, right? If it's one thing to get a phishing email from a Nigerian prince that has a lot of misspellings and isn't necessarily the most believable. It's another thing when you're getting a phishing campaign where somebody calls you that sounds exactly like your CEO and asks you to do things.
Yeah, that's correct. I think, go ahead, Francois.
No, I just want to say that I think in the future, it will just force people to be more educated, to more cross-validate it, what they see, what they thought. And if they cannot think that everything comes from the internet and ChatGPT is something that comes from internet, is the truth in itself. So as I often say, AI is a tool, AI is not the truth. And I think it's one of the biggest examples that you can see right now. So it's like, as Alex said, you cannot go on Stack Overflow, just copy paste the code and say, oh yeah, I just saw on the title that it might answer what I'm going to do. So yeah, that's the answer. So that's not how it's going to work. And people will be more educated, will take some time to see it and to double check what they're doing.
I'm envisioning a future right now where I have to like leave Post-it notes on people's like workstations. Like I've sent you these 3 emails. These are from me. No,
I mean, there's cybersecurity training that will need to be had. I think those tools will be the most powerful in the next few years. And then once everybody's gone through proper training and no longer trust any video and image they see on the web, they will just be day-to-day images that we know are fake, and we're not even thinking twice about it.
Well, if you find training that gets people not to trust things they read and see on the web, let me know, Alex, because I think we might be onto another business right there.
Maybe decades of training.
So I'd like to hit think from a broader perspective, like where do you see these technologies moving? Do you think this is like ChatGPT or GPT-3, the language model that ChatGPT is built on, DALL-E 2? Do you think this is like VHS, right? Like the really, really basic stuff, and we're going to move into a whole new world in 10 or 15 years? Or, do we think that this is kind of maxing out the capacity? Or are there fundamental limits that we're going to hit with the development of artificial intelligence that are going to make it difficult to continue to develop at the same rate? I'll bat that one over to Francois first.
That's a very, very tough question. It's like, when they release Avatar on the movie and everybody was saying, oh, the 3D experiences will be the next thing. And finally, no, it was not the next thing for a couple of years. So I think ChatGPT opened new doors. We will see more and more like Transformers model released to the public, where chatbot and so on can maybe fool most of the people. But honestly, I think no, I think we are safe for the moment. I don't think because I don't think right now computer thinking by themselves. It always needs human in the loop. It always needs data to be sure that he is in the correct direction and so on. So yeah, that's my opinion on that.
All right, so Francois does not think the singularity is imminent. I will say when you've used ChatGPT for a little bit, like at first it seems almost like magic, and over time, like as I've used it, it does, like you do start to kind of feel out and understand like there are some pretty severe limitations with the program, not least of which is that it will give you random incorrect data kind of unpredictably, or hide incorrect data and a lot of correct data to make it very difficult to actually use for a lot of different applications. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so I think one interesting area that we've shown, like we've seen thanks to ChatGPT, is that humans like to browse data and request access to data by asking questions. Like, you know, like we've learned, I remember back in the days, like when I was new to getting used to using Google, and I would see maybe my mom like using Google and asking questions, like typing the full questions, and me telling her, no, that's not how it works. Like you just include the keywords. You say apple pie. You don't say like how to make an apple pie, please. I would like for you to explain me that. So I think and what we've teach people, and how, like, for example, with how to use Google, is actually like remove information from the question, which is bad, right? Like you're removing like useful context that could have been used to perform your query. And I think what models like ChatGPT bring back is the ability to introduce all of those parameters back. Like what I want to know is not just like random information about apple pie. Like when I really want to know is how to make it, or maybe like why mine didn't turn out correctly. And adding those information back in the loop is a really good thing, and it's going to change the way with which we access information. It's like, I don't think like fully trusting the models on the full answer is the good thing, but however, like I think this is going to become the new way we use search engines.
Also, if I may add one thing, ChatGPT right now can only answer direct question, but try to ask prediction for ChatGPT. He will directly tell you that he's not able to do that.
ChatGPT is an open language or language model trained by OpenAI. It's not capable. Yeah, it has a whole thing it spits out. All right, before we wrap up, there's one last really core topic I want to talk about, and that is ethical considerations of using both, you know, DALL-E 2, obviously, and then ChatGPT. What kinds of ethical concerns I'll start with Alex and then move on to Francois, would you see around both the language model and image generation, and using AI for cybersecurity and for work more generally?
So more like in a general way, AI brings a couple of ethical problems with it. So first of all, there's the data that was used to train it. Is this data really representative of the people you're going to serve with that model, or with the data that you're going to analyze with that model? In cybersec, if we're trying to build a model that detects things that we haven't seen yet, it's hard to prove that our model will do well. And if we've seen those things, we might not need a model to detect them, right? So there's this whole problem of like building models to detect things that we haven't seen. So it's hard to prove that they work well. There's there's an ethical field about this that's called the right to explanation. Like it was like we've approached this subject multiple years ago when for example companies started issuing credit scores to people in the US, and people were asking, well, why was I denied a credit card? Why was I denied this loan? And there's this whole concept in the law that says, like, if you're using an algorithm to generate a credit score for someone, you must be able also to explain it and tell the person what he needs to fix in order to get the loan. And that's not always possible, right? There's a trade-off that we have to make between explainability and accuracy. And sometimes, like, the more you want your model to be accurate, you're going to lose explainability. And where ethics comes in is deciding in what areas is less explainability acceptable, and in what areas is more explainability a requirement? And there's no single answer to this. It always depends on the field. And in cybersec, for example, for a lot of use cases, what we're really looking forward is efficiency and not necessarily explainability. But then a company like Flare, we're trying to like present our customers with the most interesting data that we found about them. What our customers often ask is, well, why? Why do you think this is important for me? So we also need explainability even in cybersec. It's a hard question, and I don't have the single answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And Francois, what do you think?
Yeah, to add on what Alex said, I will just add that most of the model that we use data, of course, to be trained, but there is what you call a bias in those data, because you cannot provide all of the data to the model and say, learn with that. You need to choose a subfield of that, but this will result in what we call out of distribution. So what it means by that, when we release a model in production, there will be sometimes points that model never seen it, so it don't know how to react with that, and we provide false positive or false negative all the time. And that's very an open question, because it can lead to maybe some chatbot being racist or being anti-feminist, because from the majority of the data that we found on the internet, most of the time it's written by men or white men, so he will learn from that, and so the result and the question that he will give will be just a reflect of what he learned. So yeah, there's an ethical question about that.
Yeah,
but we but we cannot blame the model, because the model just do his job. He just learn what we give it to him.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I'll just add in like one ethical consideration that I think is really interesting for DALL-E, well, for image generation specifically, right, is I read an article a few weeks ago about an artist whose style, like people are copying that artist's style, and that artist never gave permission for their works to be uploaded to DALL-E 2. But now there's, now people are just creating art in exactly like this very, very unique style that this artist has. And it's, I do think that, like from copyright law, nothing AI generates, at least my understanding in the United States, is copyrightable, but it also opens up this like really interesting question. Is it ethical for people to be recreating an artist's work, their livelihood, in a few seconds using an AI algorithm without the artist ever consenting? So I think that, as the technology progresses and gets more advanced, it's going to open up all kinds of different, both ethical and legal questions that society is going to have to grapple with. I think, and are there any key points you want to leave for the audience, and then we'll go ahead and take questions.
So I think your last point is very interesting. Like it applies also to different domains, such as code generation. You have a software like GitHub Copilot that helps you write code. It helps you write code based on code that it has already seen. So if you're using tools like this, do you really own the code that it writes? That's really good questions. And hopefully we answer those questions in a way that doesn't prevent us from using those very useful tools. And so like society is going to have to make decisions and make them in a way that doesn't prevent us from using those very useful tools, right?
Yeah, but also respects people's work and intellectual property. It's a difficult line to draw.
It is.
And Francois, did you have any closing thoughts?
No, that's hard to come up with something after that. But yeah, I 100% agree of what Alex said.
Thank you so much, Alex and Francois. It was a fantastic discussion. I appreciate you being on with me.
Thanks again, Eric.